Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 362 for the 25th of Cheshvan in a leap year. In 2012, Barack Obama delivered an election campaign speech in which he uttered the famous, or perhaps I should say notorious, quote, "If you've got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen." Now, he got a lot of slack for that. Mitt Romney in particular attacked President Obama for that, as did many other Republicans primarily. And while I do try to shy away from too much political talk on this podcast, I did want to talk about this statement just a little bit and talk about it in relation to today's Tanya and what it is that we'll be discussing. So basically what Barack Obama was trying to say was that anybody who has a business benefited from many different public services. So he was sort of touting the benefits of public services, taxes, and things like that, and kind of saying that like we don't live alone. We can't do things on our own. And people who are just these pure capitalistic kind of people who feel like they're libertarian minded and very self-sufficient. Like the truth is, every single business has benefited in some way from community help, from taxes, from the government. Okay, so now the opposite spectrum of that, the people who challenged Barack Obama in this way and who attacked him for saying this, felt like that this was like an extreme chutzpah, that this was sort of like, how dare you say that? These people, I'm a business owner, for example, like we put so much work into our businesses, like how dare you say that we didn't build it, that this is not something that we did and you're giving the credit to the government and to taxes for doing this. Like how, I put a lot of work into my business. I take a lot of pride in my business, and to say that I didn't build it and that in fact it was built by the government because maybe like I benefited from like a PPP loan, like during COVID days, you know what I mean? That was very helpful as when my business was like really not very functional during that time. But to give all of the credit to that seems kind of silly, seems kind of like disingenuous. But nevertheless, there is something to what Barack Obama is saying in the sense that we don't live on an island and we are kind of all interconnected and we are all influenced by one another. And this is exactly what we're going to be learning about today in terms of charity, in terms of giving charity. So for context, we've actually reached the final epistle of Iggeres HaKodesh. It's very cool. And this final epistle, which we've seen is a theme of much of Iggeres HaKodesh, has been the theme of Tzedaka, the theme of giving charity. And what we'll learn about today is that there are actually two levels of giving charity. There's the level of giving charity where it is prompted, where you're inspired to give charity because of someone else inspired you to give charity. And then there's a type of giving charity which arouses from inside of yourself, which is self-generated. And they both have merit, believe it or not. So it's like each one kind of has its purpose to it. And as mentioned, we're all interconnected. So we are all influenced by other people. So take a moment and think about the last act of charity you did. This could be like a monetary kind of charity, like when you gave charity, or think about, maybe just like a nice deed that you did for someone else. What inspired you to do it? Did somebody ask you to give charity and then you gave the charity? Or perhaps you saw somebody volunteering or you saw somebody do something nice and you said to yourself like, oh, wow, that's really something I should do as well. Did that happen? Or did it spontaneously arise within you from the inside in like kind of like this more internal self way? So I don't know the answer to that. Sometimes it's the first, right? And sometimes it's the latter. Both of these things can happen. And this is what we're going to be learning about today, is that these are two distinct different types of charity that both have merit. The way that the Alter Rebbe is going to describe these two is where the first one he actually says is a feminine type of charity. The first one where we give charity because we're inspired by someone else who told us or inspired us to give charity. And the reason why this is a feminine type of charity is because femininity, the feminine energy in Kabbalah and Chassidus, is an energy of receiving, of being a recipient. And so in this case, even though, yes, the person is giving charity, so they're a giver, the reason why they're giving the charity is because they're actually receiving the inspiration from someone else. So in an interesting way, the giver in that sense is also a receiver. And another deeper kind of spiritual reason why they are a receiver is because giving charity in such a manner, giving charity because you were inspired by someone else, actually allows for, what it does is it creates a vessel for a certain light, for a light that is Sovev Kol Almin. It's called the light that surrounds all the world, a transcendent light. We've talked about this light before, to become manifest in the future era, in the time of the resurrection of the dead. So in the times of the resurrection of the dead, there's going to be a revealed godliness, revealed godly energy and light that we can't even imagine. And when we do these acts of charity, what we do is we create like a receptacle for this light to become manifest. Just like, for example, if you think about like a candle needs a wick for the flame. So our acts of charity in this manner, in this way of being inspired by others to give charity, and then we go and give that charity, that creates that wick, that creates that vessel, that vehicle to allow the light to manifest, to shine. Okay, now what's the second act of charity? That seems like a pretty good thing. You're giving charity, someone inspires you to do it, and you do it. The second act of charity is a self-generated act of charity. This is an act of charity that it's not that somebody from the outside influenced you and inspired you to give charity, but you actually inspired yourself through the Shema prayer, through the Shema prayer that a person reads. If they really meditate upon the godliness, the unity of the world, and this inspires them to really want to give of their life, which really means your money, because as we've discussed earlier in the Tanya, your money really is your life. This is where you put your flesh and blood into, and the toil. And even if you are you live off of somebody else, like you have like a trust fund or whatever it is, it's still like you could have used this money for things in your life to live. Instead, you're giving it to tzedakah. So when a person chooses of their own accord, not through inspiration from the outside, but from their own accord to give their money to charity, this is a more masculine type of charity. This is where you're really, really a giver. And the effect of this type of charity is that not only, like, instead of it just becoming this like receptacle for this transcendent light in the future to come, it actually draws down that light of the Or Ein Sof into this world that will be revealed in the future to come. So we'll get into the text now, and as we'll see, each one of these forms of charity has a different phrase, a different citation that the Alter Rebbe brings to describe both of these. And we'll see that the first one, because it is a more feminine type of charity where you're acting as a recipient, you're creating a vessel for that light to shine down, actually is written in a feminine manner. It says, Tzidkato omedet la'ad. His charity will stand forever. And the word omedet in Hebrew is feminine in nature, versus the second form of charity, which is related to the more masculine form of charity, where you're actually drawing down that light. You're not just creating a vesicle for that light. This actually is hinted at in a phrase that is more masculine in nature, where it says tzedek lefanav yahalech, where we see that tzedek, first of all, it's the word tzedaka without the hey, so it makes it into a more masculine way, versus tzedaka, the word tzedaka is feminine by nature, and lefanav yahalech, walks before him. These are also in the masculine gender in Hebrew. So let's get into exploring this text. And again, for context, we are at the very end of Iggeres HaKodesh. We're going to be learning the final epistle of Iggeres HaKodesh. This is Epistle 32. And this epistle begins also with a blessing, as many of these epistles do, where the Alter Rebbe begins with a blessing to his Chasidim for all of the work that they've been doing. So this is sort of like it's a little bit of a recognition epistle that we're going to be learning, like kind of like an epistle of gratitude for the fact that his chassidim have been giving so much tzedaka and have inspired so many people to give tzedaka. And he says that he really wants to encourage them to continue doing this. And, with their generous heart, that Jews are very generous by nature. And he's really encouraging, he's like acknowledging the fact that they've given so much tzedaka and inspired others to give. And he's inspiring people to continue to do so. So the Alter Rebbe says that this type of inspiration, like when you inspire other people to give tzedaka, then the tzedaka that this person ultimately gives, the way this tzedaka is referred to, like if you tell your friend, you know what, you should, I'm collecting money for tzedaka for a poor family. Do you want to give some money to tzedaka? And then your friend gives that money to tzedaka. That money that your friend gives is referred to, is an allusion to this type of giving, is referred to in Tehillim chapter 111 verse 3, where it says tzidkato omedet la'ad. His tzedakah stands forever. So meaning to say that, so we're going to analyze this phrase a little bit, that there's, first of all, the thing to notice with this, that stands forever. So there's an eternality to the giving. We know anytime we do a good deed, we've talked about this before in the podcast, especially if you give tzedakah, this lasts forever. This we've spoken about in a previous episode. I remember there was this idea that anytime you do a good deed, it creates like this atmosphere of Gan Eden around you that really just lasts forever. And this is true for any good deed that you do, especially tzedakah. You plant that tzedakah, it's a cumulative effect throughout your lifetime. It doesn't go away. It's always there, that tzedakah that you gave. But the other thing to notice about it is that this word omedet, stands, is a feminine word. So why is it feminine? So we know that, as we spoke about in the introduction, the idea of femininity is this idea of receiving. It's a recipient. And so this is like, you're receiving from the one who told you to give. If you go to your friend and you say, hey, I'm collecting money for a poor family, would you like to give some money? And then your friend says, yes, I would. Your friend is receiving that influence from you, right? And this is really a great thing that you're doing, because it's like better than leading a man to fish is to teach him how to fish. Not only are you hopefully giving to your friend as well, you're inspiring other people to give. So this is a very amazing thing, to inspire people to give tzedakah. And when you do so, then the tzedakah that they give stands forever. And so now what does this mean? What does it mean that it stands forever and that it's feminine in nature? Like how can we understand this spiritually speaking? So basically, right now we're living in exile. We're living in a state of galus, where God is concealed from the world. But in the future to come, there's going to come a time in the future where it's going to be, even after Mashiach comes, where we're going to be living in this physical world, and there's going to be the resurrection of the dead. This is the ultimate time of the revelation of godliness in this world. And the type of revelation that's going to come there is in a way of what we call sovev kol almin. This is the transcendent nature of the light of God. And this is, and the Alter Rebbe says that he spoke about this at length in a previous letter. This is in Epistle 17, if you want to look that up, where the Alter Rebbe spoke about this revelation that's going to happen at that time. And so in order for this revelation to happen, it's going to be a very amazing revelation in this time of the resurrection of the dead. There needs to be a vessel for it. It needs something to hold this revelation. Just like the body serves as a vehicle for the soul. So basically, and also like we can think about this in terms of like fire. So like we know that that fire, the only way that we can see fire in the world is if there's a wick to it, right? Like you can't, like anytime you see fire, there's always something that it's holding on to. It's not just like fire. There's always, even if you have like a torch, so it's like the torch is like serving as that wick. So there needs, if you want the soul to be manifest, there needs to be a body. If you want fire to be manifest, there has to be a wick or some vessel of some sort. And so now, what about when we talk about the light of God? What is the vessel or the wick for the light of God? This is the attribute of chesed. This is the attribute of kindness and the generosity of the heart to give. So this is the giving of the tzedakah. And in the Tikkunei Zohar, they actually talk about this, that they say that this is why we can see that chesed is described as the right arm. So you might have heard this idea before, that it's like, we talked about how the spheros, the different attributes, are all likened to different parts of the body. They sort of have like an illustration on the different parts of the body. And so chesed is often likened to the right arm. And the reason why is because the attribute of giving, of kindness, is associated with the right. And it's like, when you give, you think about it, if you're a righty, and anyways, then you give with your right hand. If you're a lefty, that's kind of an interesting question, how that fits in, though it can fit in. But discussion for another time, where it's sort of like your left becomes your right. So basically, so it's like, and there's this idea that the entire body is included in the right side. So it's sort of like starts on the right, and that's everything flows from there. So there's this idea, basically what the Alter Rebbe is trying to bring out is this idea that tzedaka is a body, tzedaka is a vessel, it's a vehicle. And he even cites in Rosh Hashanah davening that we see, it says levushot tzedaka, his garment is tzedaka. So the tzedaka serves as this garment, as this vessel for God's light. And the Alter Rebbe says that this is how we can understand the teaching that we find in the Gemara in Masachet Sukkah, page 49b, that tzedaka is recompensed only according to the kindness within it. Meaning to say that, and the way that, and another citation to understand this is in Hosea chapter 10 verse 12. Sow for yourselves for tzedaka, reap according to the kindness. So meaning to say, so what's this whole talk of like plantation and harvest, all that kind of stuff, is that when you plant a seed, that seed is hidden in the soil, and then eventually that seed that's planted in the soil leads to the growth of a great plant or a tree or something like that. So the same thing here too. It's like when we do tzedaka in this way that we've been describing, then we're basically like planting a seed here that eventually will become revealed. It's like creating this vessel, this containment for this great light that's going to be revealed in the future to come, in the time of the resurrection of the dead. And then to understand this eternal aspect of it, where it says omedet la'ad, where it's going to be standing forever, the way that we can understand this, like why is it, okay, so it's one thing to say that it creates this like vessel, but why is it a vessel that stands forever, is because we know that there's this idea that God and his vessels, God and his kelim, are actually one and the same. And this is true when we talk about the vessels of the spheros of Atzilus, which is the highest of all world. So all the more so that when we're talking about the level that's even above Atzilus, when we're talking about the transcendent level of God, the transcendent level, this tzedaka, which we've been referring to in the feminine form, meaning that it's receiving light. The light that it's receiving here comes from this place of the Sovev Kalamin, the transcendent level that becomes revealed in the time of Tchias HaMesim. So because it's coming from this like transcendent level, then it's eternal, because it's above time. It's transcendent, right? Okay, so that's about the first level of tzedaka, this whole feminine level of tzedaka. This is the tzedaka that happens as a result of being inspired by someone else. Now we're going to get into the second level, the level that is the masculine level of giving tzedaka. This is referenced to in a verse from Tehillim, chapter 85, verse 14, where it says, Tzedek lefanav yalech, tzedek shall go before him, which is written in the masculine form. If anybody knows Hebrew, this tzedek is masculine, and yihalech is also masculine. It will walk before him, will go before him. So what is this? What do we mean by this level of tzedaka? This is the attribute of chesed that gets aroused in a person's heart of their own accord through arousing their love of God during Shema, when they say the Shema prayer, where they really, if a person says the Shema prayer properly, they get so aroused to want to unify with God and to give over their entire life to this oneness, because it's like you kind of recognize that this unity that encompasses everything, not only creation, beyond creation, everything, like everything is really one, and you want to be cleaved to this oneness. You want to attach yourself to this oneness. So this is the idea. This is epitomized in the phrase "b'chol meodecha," with all of your self is one way to describe it, or all of your wealth, like, which is really connected. If you think about it, like as we described before, that your being is really encompassed, weirdly enough, in your money, because your money is what you use to sustain your life, right? And so when a person has this type of, when they give on this level, when they give from this place that they've generated from the inside, where they really want to give of themselves, like for real, this is an arousal from below. This is an asarusa delatata, as it's called in Kabbalistic terminology, and this causes an effect above. This kemaim hapanim lepanim ken lavadam. So we've brought this phrase up many times. This idea that like water reflects face to face. So it's like when we give from below in this way, then this causes the supernal man above to give from above. So the asarusa delatata, the arousal from below, elicits an asarusa delaela, an arousal from above. What is this arousal from above? This is the drawing down of the light of God and on the level of the Sovev Kalamim, the transcendent light, down here into this physical world in a way that will be revealed in the time of the resurrection of the dead. As was explained at length, again, in that other epistle, I think it was Epistle 17, if I'm not mistaken. And so this is why we say, Lefanav Yahalech. This is why it's, Tzedek will go before him. So now we can understand it in another sense, that what does it mean go before him? Because it's leading. It's like leading the way. It's not just a recipient. It's not just a follower, like, oh, you're giving tzedakah, everyone's doing it, so I should do it too. No, I'm leading the way. I'm deciding of my own accord. I'm motivated on my own to give tzedakah. So that's where it's tzedek lefanav yalech. Tzedek will go before him. Also, another way to understand it is it's drawing down. Lefanav, this word in Hebrew, is before. It also means face, the inside, the panim. It's related to the word panim. So it's drawing down from the supernal panim, the supernal face, the supernal internal aspect, which is which comes from which is above Atzilus, all the way down, and it brings it down here into our physical world, into the world of Asiya, and so the Alter Rebbe concludes here, and he says, now is the time to be brief. So, meaning it sounds like he's saying we could elaborate on this a lot, but he wants to kind of conclude here and keep it short. And he concludes with a blessing in which he cites Tehillim, chapter 125, verse 4, Hetiva Hashem latovim leisharim belibotam, which literally means, do good, O God, to the good, and to those who are upright in their heart. And this is the wish, the prayer to all who seek your welfare. So basically, the Alter Rebbe is asking Hashem to bless everybody who gives. So that's the end of the section. That's the end of this Sefer. Crazy. We have one more Sefer left in the Tanya, and then we're going to begin a whole new cycle. Very, very cool. So just to conclude here, and let's bring it back to Barack Obama's quote. Was he right? Was Barack Obama right? Do we not build this? Do we sometimes, if you're inspired by someone else who tells you to give tzedakah, and then you go and give tzedakah, do you get credit for that? The answer is yes, you do. So ultimately Barack Obama was wrong, sorry to say, because we ultimately do get credit. However, yes, it's also true that there is a difference. There are times when we are influenced by other people to give, which is a beautiful thing, and we should be influenced by other people. But that type of giving is a receiving kind of giving. It's a feminine form of giving, which totally has its place, and it creates this vessel, which is really great. And then there's another type of giving, which is in a sense higher, where we're giving of our own accord, where we're generating it for ourselves. We don't need those handouts from the government. We are doing it on our own in this sense. We are inspired through our own meditative process to give. And this creates not just a vessel for God's light, but it actually draws down the light itself, which both of these things will be revealed in the ultimate time of the world, which will be in the time of the resurrection of the dead in the future to come. So that's it for today, and stay tuned tomorrow when we begin our final Sefer in this whole series called Kuntres Achron. The last booklet is the literal translation of what that means. I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.